Hey there. I'm excited to announce this to you today. This is what you've been waiting for in your spiritual quest. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm finally ready to announce it that it's ready to go. It's the Grief to Growth Community Circle. Now, this is a sanctuary where like-minded souls are united in their journey through grief and towards personal transformation. It's more than just a place. It's a beginning. It's a commitment to growth and understanding. Here you're finding not just a community, but you're entering a circle of trust and depth. You're going to engage with interactive coursework. You'll dive into exclusive podcast episodes and partake in discussions that illuminate the path from mourning to empowerment. This is a realm where every question is honored and every individual's journey is validated. To be part of this exclusive circle, visit us at grieftogrowth.com/community or look for the chat icon at the bottom of every page on the main website. Remember that entry is a privilege because I want to ensure that every member is as dedicated and genuine as you are. You must apply to join, but the journey within is worth every step. So go ahead and join us today. Check it out, grieftogrowth.com/community, and I look forward to seeing you there. So, hi everybody, this is Brian back with another episode of Grief to Growth. And today I've got with me Tracee Dunblazier. She's a Los Angeles-based spiritual empath. She's a shaman. She's an 8-time national award-winning author. Tracee is a multi-sensitive. She has a blend of intuitive information combined with different modalities, and that's provided the opportunity for many to achieve deep healing and create the success and peace that they seek in their lives. She's written a book called Transformative Grief, and I want to read one of the endorsements from it because it's from a friend of mine, Austin Wells. And Austin says, author and spiritual empath Tracee Dunblazier's Transformative Grief, an ancient ritual of healing for modern times, is an eloquent, straightforward lighthouse for anyone lost in the deep waters of grief. Sourcing from a professional and personal experience, she illuminates the inward descent of grief as an opportunity for deeper self-awareness and personal empathy. Through poignant exercises and introspective guidelines, the reader is guided towards navigating the depths of their grief and emerging a more conscious and heart-open soul. Austin calls it a master guidebook for anyone going through extraordinary change. So with that, I'm excited to welcome Tracee to the show today.
I'm great. I'm very happy to be welcomed. And just so you know, I have a braying cat. There's a cat in the background, and when she wants to talk, there is no shutting her up.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I might pick her up and just overlove her for a minute. It says, here she comes. See?
Yeah. They can always tell. They can always tell when you're recording. My dog acts up too. She'll probably roll through here in a couple of minutes, and she likes to whine. So we love animals here.
Good. This is Charlotte.
Hello, Charlotte. She's beautiful. So for anyone that writes about grief, I always have to ask, what inspired you to write a book about grief?
Well, I have grieved every day of my life until I was about 50. And there was from 35 to 50, there were some major turning points that really shifted it. But I experienced an enormous amount of grief from spiritual trauma, from different emotional traumas, from, some physical experiences. But the spiritual trauma, I was born psychic and would constantly have night terrors and dreams that come from other times and spaces. And all of that, grief was always my salve to awakening, to accessing my faith, to reconnecting with my higher spirit, with the Creator. Grief was the way that I did it and then learned from that experience. I, have grieving every day. At some point, usually it was, at night, and then daytime I wouldn't grieve, and then nighttime I would cry myself to sleep. And it wasn't something that I could speak with people about. I didn't want to get Western medicine help because I didn't think they were going to help me access what was really going on with me. And I didn't want to be told I was crazy, and I didn't want to be on medication. There was a lot of things that I knew weren't right for me. And I want to be clear, it's not right for me. That's not everybody else's story. So that's not a statement about mental health care.
Sure.
But it was definitely my way. And it was from that process, I learned a lot about the spiritual process of grief and what it does for us. how it transforms our ideas, beliefs, experiences. It actually changes the neurons in our brain and creates a space where we can repopulate our neural pathways with new beliefs, thoughts, and ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really one of the ways that helps us relate differently to our memories. Because I don't know if go ahead.
No, it's interesting that you identified that as grief, because typically think of grief as like a particular thing, like a particular loss of a person or something. But it sounds like you had I think what a lot of people would call it depression, which you're going through, but you identified it as grief.
Yes. Well, the reason depression is a part of it, but depression is a relationship to something. And I find that people who are depressed, it's because they haven't allowed themselves the opportunity to see and accept the truth as it is. When we're depressed, we are slowing down all of our systems to take a deeper look inside. And if we are willing to do that self-reflection, then our spirit leads us in that direction. But sometimes, and I'm not really talking about clinical depression, because clinical depression is something different.
Right.
Because clinically depressed, their chemistry doesn't allow much shift. And so it would take an enormous amount of behavioral change, which is oftentimes impossible because they don't feel up to it, right? They can't overcome the feeling aspect. But in general, we experience depression when we are slowing down to take a deeper look inside. And then we experience anxiety when we are speeding up to become vigilant in our perspective. Right? And those two things are a part of spiritual awakening. And spiritual awakening occurs when grief is always a part of our spiritual awakening. And when I say that, when people experience an extreme loss, the loss of a loved one, or the loss of a physical loss, disease, the loss of a house, any kind of a major relationship, but something that people have been relating to for a long period of time, when that goes away, it causes a internal shift that changes the endocrine system and oftentimes can spark what we call a spiritual shift or a spiritual awakening. And when that happens, our endocrine system, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, the thyroid, each one of our glands in our body that connect to the endocrine system carry a sacred light or sacred geometry. And when we have an awakening of those places, it awakens certain energy and information in our spirit, our soul. And that soul energy or information becomes a part of our consciousness. So we become aware of it. And it is through that awareness period that grief often comes. Right. So when I'm talking about grief, I'm specifically talking about the crying, the wailing, the enormous emotional response that comes when we feel that loss or that opening. Our culture is the one that tells us it's about loss. Our spirit tells us it's about awakening and expanding and accessing more information and more truthful information about ourselves. The more we, whatever that truth is, whatever, each person has their own truth. And then there are spiritual truths. And each person will live their own truth, going through each awakening one after another and after another until they get to the common spiritual truth that we all experience.
Wow. So you said I think I heard you were kind of always grieving. Did this start as a child?
It started as an infant. Okay. I mean, interestingly enough, this is it's funny. I've not thought about this, but my mother used to always say, I was such a good baby. I never cried. I never fussed. I was always helpful to her. I was the youngest of three. But interestingly enough, I never spoke to her about my night terrors, the dreams that I would have, the spiritual experiences, entities, all kinds of strange things happened, and I would grieve my way through them and work through them on my own. And so during the day, I really was a good kid. I didn't cry much. If somebody else was crying, I am an empath, so I could join them in that. But it was always my desire was always to be an anchor. My desire was always to be an anchor to keep them steady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think I was like that as a child. I felt out of place and sad, but I didn't know for any reason. I wouldn't have called it grief at the time, but I just felt like, just out of place. And my parents, a few times they knew that I'd stayed up all night, and they didn't know until I was an adult why that happened. So yeah, I can relate to that.
Absolutely. I think too that the other thing that oftentimes because we are what's the word that I want? Our culture teaches us, we are indoctrinated to believe that grief is bad, it's negative, it weakens us. And so we don't allow it. And so we never because once you grieve, then you get to access what is the purpose of the grief, the deeper understanding that comes with what you're grieving about.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't allow the grief process, you can never get to that information. And most people stay in anger or depression.
Yeah.
And anger is the next step. But eventually that anger needs to give way to the expansive sense of crying or emotion that comes. And so we have to teach ourselves.
So you call yourself a multi-sensitive. What do you mean by that?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, something I want to tell you about today. My podcast platform, Buzzsprout, has recently made it easier for me to allow you to support me financially. Go to www.grieftogrowth.com/subscribe. That's grief2growth.com/subscribe. And once you're there, you can sign up to support me financially. Now, you can do it for as little as $3 a month, or of course, as much as you'd like. If you do that, you'll get access to bonus episodes, and you'll see those in the regular feed. They'll have a lock on them. But when you become a subscriber, you'll actually get access to your own private feed, and you'll be able to listen to the regular podcast along with the bonus podcast for the subscribers. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing the podcast. And I want to thank those of you who support me financially. Have a great day, and on to the episode.
I mean by that I'm clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, which means I channel. I hear things, see things, sometimes have prophetic dreams, not all the time. My experience oftentimes, I call myself a spiritual empath instead of just an emotional empath, because I often that's how I read people, is I take on their spirit and I experience it and I go, oh, okay, I could recognize that. And so it's a way of being multidimensional. I believe that we are all this way. I came in with a deeper level of proficiency or awareness of it already.
Yeah. So when you say you're multi-sense, is it with people that are living, people that are past, or both?
Everybody. I mean, so it's interesting because I really struggled when I started this work publicly and working with people, how to describe what it is that I do, because I couldn't limit it. I deal with everybody and I deal with everybody and anything. But you can't, you can say that in an elevator pitch, but it's really hard to create a name. And I didn't like the bad rap that psychics get by using the word psychic. Mediumship kind of implies a limitation or an expectation that doesn't always happen, right? Just because everybody's got some dead people and they don't always come through.
Right.
Oftentimes some will have messages, but if somebody's there and they've got a message, it will always come through. But people have this expectation, if you're a medium, that is the only thing that's going to happen in a session.
Right. So you're getting everything from everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in terms of your career, did you have a job, a normal job, quote, before this, or?
Oh yes, I've had multiple normal jobs. I worked as a makeup artist, waitress. I worked in entertainment for a while. I did a cabaret show where I sang, and I've always been psychic, but it wasn't until I came to LA and started to tell people about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's Paloma in the background, just FYI. She doesn't know, but the door is open for you if you want to go out. She's looking at me because she wants to go out, but she thinks that she doesn't know yet that the door is not open because she hasn't looked yet.
Yeah.
She will go look. So what I was doing directly before this is I was doing special events for Donna Karan.
Oh.
So that was in the fragrance world. I was in the fragrance world,
Mm-hmm.
and I started doing this work with the public when I became a gift with purchase. Have you ever gone to the mall and bought a bottle of cologne and you get a gift with it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I started. When my boss found out what I did, he invited me to. Sorry, he invited me to do readings for people.
Oh wow!
And I had such a profound response to that. Like people lined up out the door for the first two or three events that I did, and then people were having these cathartic, tearful experiences with me just for the 5 minutes that we sat together.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one of the things that really taught me about empathy and how deeply we need it and how indoctrinated we are to not do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes when people sit in my presence, they just unlock.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so that was my first experience of it, and that was about 25 years ago.
Yeah,
and I've been doing it, working with the public since that point.
Okay. So were those mostly mediumistic readings or psychic readings? Combination?
They would, I mean, again, it's all, for me, it's all the same thing. It's all psychic energy. You're reading what is in somebody's space.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when I don't limit what that means to me, whatever a person, I read to the degree at which a person is ready, willing, and able to receive. Right. So whatever comes through is what people are ready and able to receive. You could say that they were psychic readings, but psychic implies the psychic vibration, if you want to get technical about it, is it lacks emotion, which is kind of the point. It's one is able to see what's going on without feeling it. I always feel it.
Mm.
So I oftentimes would feel what somebody had going on, and then I would say, well, I feel X, Y, and Z, and they're like, oh, okay, yes, those are things I've been thinking about, right?
Yeah.
Because they weren't they weren't coming through a feeling place for them, but a thinking place.
Interesting. Yeah. So tell me about your business now, the publishing business you have.
So Go Tracee Publishing focuses on spiritual tools for the 21st century. I create cards. I've got the book. I've got my Rainbow Warrior Activation deck. They're all tools to help people connect more deeply to themselves. The grief book, here's the Transformative Grief book. This covers the point of doing this actually, the Transformative Grief book, I did not publish it. It's actually published through Red Feather Mind Body Spirit, which is Schiffer Publishing. But I wanted to do this grief book because we need to, as a culture, change the way we think about grief and the way we see ourselves and our emotionalism. And we need to give ourselves much more space to much more often experience small grief responses to things, so that when the big things come, it doesn't take us down, or that we have beliefs about it that allow us to surrender to our grief for a period of time, and that we can still manage a life despite our grief.
Yeah. Right.
A lot of people feel like if I ever let myself feel any grief at all, I could never stop.
Yes.
And right, that's a big one. And I it will always stop. Grief is finite. whatever it is. It might be, you might be layered. Like, I mean, so for me, when if I had to break it down, I've probably been doing 10,000 years worth of grief in one 50-year lifetime. Of course those are made up facts, but
Yeah.
but the idea here is that my grief that I experienced was multi-layered and multi-leveled and scanned many, many years back, not just this life experience for me. So I had to process those things. If we die in a state or condition that we cannot process our own transition, it will stay with us until we can process it. Somebody's got to process it. And so that's how I came into this life experience, to process out these different layers of grief that I brought with me from another time, so that I could A, complete that work, and B, better understand what grief is and how and why our world needs it today.
Yeah, interesting. So needs grief. Tell me what you mean by that.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi there. I'm really excited to tell you about my latest ebook. It's 4 lessons that you can learn from the near-death experience without going through all the trouble of dying to learn them. I've been studying NDEs for several years now. I am completely convinced that not only are they 100% real, but that there's some very universal wisdom that we can get from the near-death experience. And I've distilled that down in this book into 4 short lessons. And I've also given you all the reasons why I believe that NDEs are absolutely real. So go to www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons to pick it up for free. www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons. I hope you enjoy it.
Well, we're bad things are happening. It is happening, people. So we have to embrace the spiritual process of enlightenment that comes when we allow ourselves to feel what it is that we feel. And grief will shift how you see things. If more people were grieving rather than being fearful, we would not have the world that we would today. But they're not. They're getting angry. They're getting frustrated. They're wanting to bully because they've been bullied, right? So there's all of this dichotomy of going back and forth, and grieving takes both of those pieces and brings it to the center. And for whatever it is that you're grieving, it's going to, after you've grieved, it opens up a new perspective on what was causing the conflict, right? And we don't really we don't have, religion in our urban world today is not as popular. I've done a little bit of research on it, and a lot of the millennials, 30% of the millennials don't claim any kind of religion. Yeah. They see themselves as spiritual, and there's people in my field now. There's a lot more of us, because people are ready to hear something that's not only one master related. One person from one religion that governs all things. You can have the creator and relate to the creator any way you want, and you can relate to the different elements of yourself as a god and goddess in all the ways that you do in your own way, right? And the more we have access to shifting the way we perceive our relationship to our highest self, the more things change. And grief is a part of that change. Like, it takes us from one level to the next level to the next level. It's like when you grieve and a door opens, then you grieve some more and another door opens.
Yeah. So you use the term transformative grief, and that really caught my eye when I saw the title of your book. So what does that mean to you?
Transformative grief to me means that when we grieve, it makes us the people we become. As the more and more we allow grief, the more and more it changes outdated beliefs or thoughts that we have about ourselves and others. It opens up our ability to be creative and visualize more deeply the world we want to live in, the life we want to have, the relationships we want to have, right? It's our agent of change, and it takes us from I keep wanting to use the word concern, which is interesting, but conflict to peace.
Mm.
And, I think for a lot of people, they stick in that position of being concerned about something, so they never grieve it. They never touch it. They never walk to it. They just stand back and look at it and are concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So transformative grief is recognizing that grief daily changes the person that you are. It allows you to more freely become the person you want to be.
So would grieving then be feeling into it? Would that be another way of putting it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because when you transformative grief, it's funny as you were saying that, I was thinking about, the people I work with, and, inevitably the grief is transforming them in some way, and they often don't really see it, but I can see, and it's like you said, it's a reset. Everything's up for grabs, and it can be scary at first because you feel like you're losing everything,
Right.
But it's a chance to rebuild.
Yeah. One of the best, when before anybody knew I was psychic, I've always had maybe one or two friends who kind of knew, but not really. Mm-hmm. And maybe I had a friend that was into it, or they were that way themselves. But when I came to LA, I only had one friend, and I started to meet people, and I was probably in my late 20s at the time, and I met these women that were at least double my age, and they kind of took me under their wing, and we would get together for weekly. We'd do like psychic night at my house, and everybody would get together and play with cards or whatever, just have conversations about this stuff. And one of these women said to me, Tracee, when this hits you, let it go, like scream loud, give into it, just be as loud as you cry out to the heavens. Mm-hmm. And think of it, the angels need to hear you. Mm. And somehow that changed everything for me, because I had, I cried myself to sleep at night, and for 30 years nobody knew. You know what I mean? So I was doing a really good job at hiding it, trying to find all these other ways to balance myself, when I really just needed to give myself permission to cry and be surrounded by people who didn't take it personally, who don't try to change it, who don't tell you to get over it. Right? There's all these archetypes that in our world of experiencing grief and being deeply uncomfortable with it. Yeah. So when she told me to be loud and proud, that was the answer for me, and things that made me recognize the next time I had a bout of grief, it really made me recognize that I was in control, and I had never felt that way. I always felt that it controlled me. I didn't have control of my consciousness and what was coming to me. All of these dreams, all of these different things, all these things that I didn't really have any understanding of at the time. Crying loudly made me recognize that there was a deeper level of support that was palpable, if I could be open through my grief, and that I was in control of it, and that on some level I wanted this. This wasn't something that was happening to me; it was happening for me. And that's the most important thing, is when grief is not happening to people, it's happening for them, for their transformation, for their realization, for their opportunity to get new information, accept their circumstances, and then get the resolution to the things they want to change about it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because I think a lot of people, I think almost everyone, when they're going through grief, it's like, why is this happening to me? As you said, I don't have any control. In our society, we want to get people past it. Let's just get over this. Let's move through it. Yeah. Let's just get this, get this over with. I want to be fixed. And then people around you get uncomfortable because no one likes to see anyone sad. So they're always trying to offer you solutions.
Exactly. That's one of the things, one of the parts of the book I talk about is, if you're experiencing a loss of any sort and you have to be around your family at the holidays or go to a party or deal with work, just going into work sometimes, people are really comfortable as long as you let them off the hook.
Yeah.
Right now I'm really emotional and I might cry. And I just want you to know that I'm okay. You don't need to do a thing about it. Right? When you let people know in what I'll call a sober time, right? When you're even and you let people know that happens or that's going to happen, or that you give them permission to be comfortable with it and to not try to fix it for you, because there's nothing to be fixed because you're not broken.
Right.
You are transitioning from one frame of reference in life to another frame of reference. And I find that every single transition I go through, it's always to something better. Always.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. It was interesting because I was just talking with someone yesterday who's, a young person that just lost their first job and going through a transition. And I'm giving them perspective of someone 40 years older. And I'm like, one day you'll see that there's something good in this. I said, I can't tell you what it is right now, but I can tell you what I went through this 30 years ago myself. And at the time I thought it was the worst thing ever, but it's that perspective that we get once we've been through a few things that we understand there's something good in this, even, and whatever it is.
It always is. And again, when we tell ourselves, when we stay in the anger about it or the blame of others about it, because at the end of the day, people are awful. Let's just say that people are awful and they're going to do some awful stuff. But at the end of the day, you still control your own destiny, despite what others do. And when you know that, the ways in which that can happen for you will come and you will see them. If you do not believe that's a possibility, what you believe will show itself to you over and over again until you've had enough grief experiences to shift your perspective and give you a little bit of light.
Right.
Right.
Now, I know, when it comes to grief, I would say our society is not really good they haven't equipped us to deal with it. And I know you have some practices in your book. So what are some of the practices that you offer people? Because people are like, I don't even know how to do this. How do I do this?
So I love building altars. It's the only time I really enjoy cleaning my house. Is I create a sacred space and I clean it really well. And I set it up with items that bring me joy. That's really an altar is putting on the table for what you're willing to give up to the creator in order to receive what you want in return. It's like an exchange. And so at the end of each chapter, there are 12 chapters. There are 12 suggested altars. You can do them any way you want. I suggest a lot of different herbs for burning. I like to do a burning pot with different herbs, sage, cedar. There's lots of recommendations. But I basically set my intention. If I've got a conflict going on and I feel numb or neutral about it, that tells me that there's something brewing that I don't have enough information yet to fully grieve. I need more. So I ask for that. I want more information about this situation. And so I write that out and I fold it up. I put it under a candle. I light the candle flame. If you can do it safely. I always use jar candles in case of earthquakes. And this has actually happened. I had the jar candles burning in an earthquake and they just fell over and put themselves out with the wax. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But if you can do it, you don't have to have flame, but flame is very helpful when you feel stagnant in your emotional body. But once you start to take a physical world action towards your emotional goal, what you need to facilitate that will then come up. It will come to your mind because you've opened up the door and you say, please give me this information. How do I do this? What can bring me more of what I need in order to allow this energy to move through me? And that's the idea, is grief is something from the creator. It's energy that's moving through you. And then on the tail of that is this new wisdom, this new joy, and these new concepts that come to you. They go, oh, okay, well, that's not really what I was seeing. I'm seeing now this in this way, and it's totally different when you look at it from this perspective. Right? That's one of the reasons why multiple people have multiple truths, because you can look at one thing from different perspectives all around it, and they're all different. Right. So alter creation is one. If you just one of the things for people, like if you do counseling with people, it's imperative that you have your own ritual for grief, that you give yourself permission to unload all of that. Mm-hmm. And so for somebody who has a job where they're constantly working with people, or suffering from compassion fatigue, I recommend that you give yourself 30 minutes to put on some sad music, or even a sad movie, or even a happy movie, something like comedy. Mm-hmm. Because comedy, starting to laugh, will also start the train of emotion coming, and often will turn into tears, which will allow you to release that way as well. So giving yourself a definitive 15 to 30 minutes every day to do some deep breathing and listening to something that just allows you to just think or take an inventory of your day. Mm-hmm. Just if we will give ourselves just a little bit of time, it moves it pretty quickly, is what I'm trying to get out.
That was actually really interesting as you said that, because I was thinking I love listening to music and all kinds of music, upbeat, sad, whatever. And there's times I just want to put on something that's sad. Yes. And I talk to so many people, because I run these Facebook groups, and I'm like, what song do you like? What lifts you up? And some people say, I can't listen to music anymore. Just my son died, just my husband died. I can't listen to music. And I find that to be so sad.
Well, and the reason why is because music is the one thing that connects to your right brain, which is your intuitive self, which is the access point of your grief.
Right.
And so they think that it's keeping them together, but if they would allow just even 5 minutes a day, mm-hmm. just allow a little bit of that stuff to come out, and then you can get up and go about your day. Sometimes, there have been many times, another type of grief that somebody can experience. If the people out there are an empath, it's called transpersonal grief. It's when you grieve for another person or the collective. Mm-hmm. So when 9/11 happened, I was here in LA. I had a bunch of people in New York. I just moved from New York, and for 10 days, I grieved night and day, 24/7, all big eyes. I was a hot mess. Mm-hmm. But I was also not in resistance to that. I knew how to take care of myself. I knew it would eventually end. Crying for several days didn't intimidate me, because I had done that many other times. But that's the one fear that people have, is if it starts, it won't stop, and it will always stop.
Yeah.
And you can
people say that to me.
You can always breathe into a new. You can, if you're crying and it's too much for you, take a few deep breaths, change your position, change your room. Your world will change, and you can do more later.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really, it's fascinating that you said that, because I keep running across these people say I can't listen to music, and I'm like, that means you should be listening to music. Exactly. Go ahead and let it out, because people, they feel like if they let it out, they're not in control, so they're trying to stuff it down and hold it in.
Well, and I would say that it's the opposite is true. You are letting it control you when you withhold it. You control it when you allow it to come out. You control that. And using your vocal cords, like living in New York, I moved when I was 18, and it was the 80s, and it was a deep time there, and homelessness had just shot up for the first time in many, like on a whole other level, a whole other scale. And I would sing. I listen to gospel, and I sing it at the top of my lungs. And that's the only thing that would give me even a little bit of solace when I was in New York. I cried a lot, but I was still in the habit of crying at night, and girding my loins during the day, and not showing people where I was really at. So the singing really helped me to manage that differently.
Mm-hmm. So I could see people going, sounds like she likes grieving. She's like really into this.
Well, it is who I am. Meaning I was built that way. My chemistry, I mean, we could, there are 1,000 different things that I could blame it on.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all true. And it's just what I did. And luckily I had the faith inside me to know that there was an end point, mm-hmm. that this was purposeful. And so I just embraced it.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, grieving actually now that I am out of the victimized perspective of it, because that's, no matter how you slice it, when you are first really starting to grieve and you've experienced a big loss that maybe triggered it, that there's a deep inner awareness that makes you focus on yourself, and you do feel victimized. It does feel like it's happening to you and not for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're talking to somebody who has, 5 decades worth of grieving to look back on and say, it happened for me, not to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's the wisdom of being at this point with it.
Right.
When somebody's starting, I hope that I can inspire people to embrace it even a little bit, because there is nothing like the feeling of clarity that comes after you have grieved.
Yeah.
It's like you wake up and the colors are different, things are different, and there's hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hope is hard to come by these days, so you got to take it where you can.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And before we started recording, we were talking about the state of the world, and no matter who you are, there's bad stuff going on, yeah. And there are a lot of people who are like, well, I just can't. I'm going to turn it off. I can't be part of it. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to connect to it. And I think what you're saying is, we have to lean into it.
We do. And here's the thing, that the whole, I'm going to turn off the news, therefore it doesn't bother me, is a fantasy. Yeah, that's just true. It just is a fantasy. We are all interconnected, whether or not you know it, whether or not you have an awareness of it.
That was fun.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Well, just for anybody that knows, we had a little technical glitch here. Right before we started recording, I was telling Tracee I live in Ohio and I like it because it's like everything's kind of mild here. We don't have crazy weather. We don't have fires or floods or anything like that. And while we were recording, I looked out the window. I'm like, we have a storm blowing in. And of course, the power went out.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So always something. But yeah, I appreciate you coming back and we can finish this up. So we were talking about grief and how sometimes we tend to avoid it, and how you really lean into it, encourage other people to lean into it as well, because it's a transformative process.
It is. I think that I call it everyday grief. I do a whole chapter on it. I do a whole chapter on everyday grief, because if we don't give ourselves 5 to 10 minutes a day to sit down, especially for commuters, I mean, drive time, when I was working outside of the house, was one of the times where I did some of my best grieving. Was while driving, believe it or not. But it's if you give yourself a few minutes, 5, 10, 15, whatever you can manage, every day when you get home from work, to give yourself that space to ponder about the day, whatever circumstance happened, whatever experiences you had, whatever feelings came up, sometimes, things break down. The coffee machine breaks, the car doesn't start, the cats or dogs, poop somewhere. Like there's all these mundane things that as they layer up, they build in your emotions, and you've got to give yourself the opportunity to release those emotions and find a real clarity about it.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great way to build those muscles, to build that resilience,
Yeah.
to grieve the small things, so that when the
Yes.
big things come, you've got the practice, you're not uncomfortable with those feelings.
Right.
So I really like that everyday grieving practice. That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, and that there's an end to it, because even when people talk a lot about waves of grief, and that's
Mm-hmm.
true. If you lose somebody, I was watching. I got sucked into Bosch,
Oh,
the show Bosch. It's good. I'm enjoying it, but he just lost his ex-wife. She was just murdered, and his daughter asks him, does the pain ever go away? And he
mm,
said no. And it was interesting because I'm like, well, I've lost all of my peoples, other than I've got two sisters and a few cousins. And your relationship, grief changes your relationship to the departed. It changes it from them being here in the moment and you can call them and talk to them or touch them, to you have to call them and talk to them in a new way. You talk to them in your heart. You connect with them in a spiritual way. You
mm-hmm.
still see them. You still feel their vibration, but the grief awakens you to this higher frequency of energy on which to connect with them.
Right.
And once you have changed that relationship, you're still going to miss everything that you had here with them. And depending on how close you were to them, I think that my father died when I was 11, and it took me, in those formative years, it took me until I was in my 30s to really stop blaming my mother, because that's when you have a single parent raising adolescents, if one of the partners dies, it's a natural thing for the kids to blame the other parent who's left with them.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what the circumstances were. It's just they need somebody to take it out on, and that other person is left to do that.
Right. Right.
But what I have learned through all of the deaths of people that I've experienced is that your relationship changes, and once you have that first experience where you can recognize them in some way in spirit, the pain stops. The sadness doesn't necessarily stop, but over time, that will even change too. But it's not the expectation isn't ever to get over it.
Right.
The expectation is always to transition into what exists now.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love what you said about the relationship, because I think a lot of times people, when someone passes, we initially feel like it's the end of the relationship, and it's really the beginning of a new relationship. It might not be the one that we want, and it's going to be different, and it requires work.
Yes.
But we can get there, and you're right. The pain, for me, it's been 8 years since my daughter passed away. It was 8 years this past Saturday, and it's different. It's different than it was. I still miss her. There's still sadness, but it's certainly different, and it's not as sharp. It's not as intense. Right. It's not, I don't cry every day like I used to. Right. So it does change.
It does change, and I think the other thing too is that when the one thing, the one good upside of big loss is that you can tell people to F off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. When it comes to our little grief expressions or our frustrations about our day or whatever, we have to give ourselves permission to grieve and to feel what we're feeling without making it about somebody else or even bringing them into it.
Yeah.
I think that and when you've experienced big loss, you've learned how to tell your loved ones, no, yeah. I can't. No, I won't. I need time. Right. These are all, taglines that when you've experienced something that trumps all other things.
Yeah.
It gives you permission to say no to people in ways that maybe you may not have prior,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that we have to learn when we're going through that. We have to learn how to set those boundaries. We have to learn, like you said earlier, if you're going to be in a situation where you tell people, okay, I'm going to be sad, right? Okay. So it's not on you. It's not about you. If you mention my loved one, you didn't make me sad,
Right.
you have to educate those people that it's not your responsibility. And it's okay to be sad for a while, for a long while.
I remember just after my mother died, she had cancer. And so for 9 months, I have 2 other sisters, and we would all go back and forth to Albuquerque to take care of her for 2 weeks at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got back from her after doing that for 9 months and then coming back from the funeral, I was living in an apartment. I was actually managing the 40 units here in LA. And a very good friend of mine who lived there, she came up and she says, I'm so sorry. And I don't know what she said to me, but oh, God bless her. It irritated me beyond belief. I had nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, she was saying everything that she was saying to me was every wrong thing she could possibly say.
Yeah.
She's in a better place. No, I don't care about what place she's in. She's not here,
Right.
And so she was saying all of these things. And finally I said, you know what, just stop. Here's the thing. I understand that this makes you uncomfortable. And you know what? That's okay. I don't need you to console me. The gift that you have that I love is you are hilarious. So why don't you just be you?
Mm-hmm.
Let's have a drink and you just be you and make me laugh. And that's okay. That's what I need from you. That's what you can do for me.
Nice.
And she's like, okay. We call it the living gift because her mind just thinks in unique ways. And she would always just come up with these things that were hilarious and we would laugh for hours. And so once I gave her permission to be funny, that's
Right.
the other thing. People they think it's like blasphemous to laugh at a funeral, or that, when you lose somebody that requires sadness. And it doesn't. You're going to feel manic. You're going to feel all kinds of ups and downs.
Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And I know I wanted to ask you about this. I know you believe in using crystals in your work. Tell me about the crystals and how that helps.
Oh my goodness, I do. So here, just within hand's reach, here's one. This is a citrine. This is a fantastic crystal for grief. Because it actually works with the 3rd chakra, which is your power center. And your power center it's governed by your stomach and your intestines. And it's how you put your energy out into the world. It's how you require that other people perceive you. But it's that chakra is one of the places that we grieve from. And so this crystal is a wonderful crystal. It actually draws in energy and helps to metabolize the energy. You know about crystals. I'm going to reach around you right quick here and grab some of my, I have a new deck coming out of altar cards for crystals.
Wow. Okay.
And they're really fun. In fact, I'm going to, trying to do this so I don't look strange, but I've got a whole desk full of books that I got at my recent conference and have no room. Okay, so here's the deck.
Oh wow!
And I'm going to choose a crystal for us all, that's going to give us some energy and information.
Okay.
A little message for us all, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, so this is a crystal called Prasiolite. And it's a form of quartz, and it means that it has big crystals. It's a macrocrystalline crystal, so you can see the termination, and its energy is about growth. It's an incredible crystal to help metabolize your emotion, balance the emotion, open the heart chakra. one of the things that happens when people experience an enormous loss is they close their heart. They don't want, they feel like they don't want to get taken advantage of. They don't want to, like, it shifts how you see people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you open your heart, it allows a deeper flow of energy that you can see yourself much more from a more peaceful perspective, right? Not from and it helps you process pain easily, but it helps you process it through your heart rather than keeping it just in your second chakra, which is what most people do. When you feel victimized, it's because you're very close to the attachment of what it means about you to be emotional. Chrysolite is a crystal that you can work with. And when I say work, you can hold it, you can keep it in your pocket. They come in all forms, cut pieces, pocket pieces, hand pieces. But just having it and holding it, keeping it in a pocket, having it with you. If you have anxiety, palm stones, there's a ton of palm stones in different types of crystal. But working with it helps to shift your energy.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's what I'm not a very good salesperson today, but I just finished a series of 4 different products. One is the deck, which is called the Your Crystal Allies series.
Okay.
And each one of them, in fact, to the first one, it's not handy right now. The first one is called Your Crystal Allies: the 12 Best Gems and Minerals for Healing Trauma and Navigating Change.
Okay.
And that's out right now. You can buy it anywhere books are sold. But it's great because I have been a crystal collector for decades. That was one of the first things that I did through marbles. Did you ever play marbles?
Yeah.
I loved marbles. And back in the day, they used to make marbles out of actual stone and not just glass like they do today. But I realized that over the decades, I have certain crystals that I have worked with that have companioned me in very dark periods of time and really helped me come out of it with wisdom and confidence and all of the, it really carried me through some very, very deep times. And so I have this huge collection. And so I wanted to start sharing them with other people. And that's why I did the altar card deck and the books. And so the pictures that I've taken, you can actually work with that stone. And in the book, I'm actually talking about that stone and my experiences with it over the years.
That's awesome, because I know a lot of times I've gone to crystal shops, I just get overwhelmed, and they're like, they all sound great, right? So I can't buy all of them. So everybody wants peace, and everything that all the crystals do. So it's nice to have a guide, to have somewhere to start.
Exactly, and it's so funny because I'm not the manual writer myself. I for me it was like 12. I want 12 because that's manageable.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted it for people, because I know there are a lot of new people to getting into crystals, and it's no longer as niche as it was even 10 years ago. It's becoming much more popular, and people are being exposed to it in a positive way. And I just wanted to give somebody, like, not just thinking about the crystal and getting something from it, but really seeing it as an ally to bring that thing out in you.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what it will do.
Yeah. Well, Tracee, we're just about out of time. I really appreciate you doing this today. Appreciate your patience with the little technical hiccup we had. Remind people of the name of your book, Transformative Grief, so they can find it, and where people can find you.
Great. Transformative Grief, an ancient ritual of healing for modern times. You can buy it anywhere books are sold. And you can find me at TraceeDunblazier.com, which is TraceeDunblazier.com. Awesome.
Again, thanks for being here, and we'll talk soon.
Good.
Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Bye. Hi there. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the podcast, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What questions came up for you? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I invite you to visit us at grief2growth.circle.so. That's grief2growth.circle.so to continue the conversation with me and with other listeners. It's a space to sound off, to share reactions, and to go deeper into the topics from the show. I look forward to chatting more, and I hope to see you there.